Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Dave's Faves. And today I want to talk to you about Brahms' Fourth Symphony. Boy, did I agonize over this one, because there are a bazillion recordings of Brahms' Fourth Symphony. There are many wonderful recordings of Brahms' First Symphony. Fourth. I'm talking about the fourth, pardon me. And, it's a tough little bit to do. It really is. It has its tricky moments. I tend to like performances of it because of the Passacaglia finale. A Passacaglia is a set of variations over a ground bass. A ground bass means just something on the bottom. It's an oxymoron, ground bass, because it's a bass, right? In this case, the bass is an 8-note da 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 bwah bwah. That's all it is, and that repeats itself over and over and over and over again. Well, all kinds of other stuff happens on top of it. Now, you don't always hear the bass. Often you can, but Brahms wants to keep it interesting, and in order to avoid monotony, it's often undetectable. And that's a good thing, because when you actually hear it clearly, it's like a pillar, a signpost of where we are. But that's the finale. And this kind of finale it's a very old form. It's a Baroque or even earlier form. It's very strict. It tends to be this is a piece that ends in the minor key, which is extremely rare. It ends in a state of high rage and anger and fist-shaking fury. It's quite remarkable, but it's done with this sort of implacability because of that ground bass that's, chugging away underneath the finale. And so the performances that I like are ones that have a certain, at least to my mind, classical austerity. Let's just call it that. They have to have a kind of grim, serious intensity that carries not just through the finale, but all the way through the symphony. Brahms's orchestration comes in for a lot of flack. It really does. But he was a master of a certain type of symphonic orchestration. That is, getting the most out of the smallest possible quantity of instruments. And, there's sort of a rule in Brahms symphonies, which is kind of interesting. It's not 100% observed, but it is mostly, which is that every symphonic movement he writes uses all of the instruments called for in that movement in its last chord. Because he really felt that being symphonic meant using everything at his disposal, but at the same time, only using what was absolutely necessary. And this symphony really, really reflects that. It does. The first movement has no trombones whatsoever. It's a very angry movement. The end is really tragic and gripping. Actually, none of the symphony uses trombones until the finale at all. The third movement, which is very famous, has a triangle, believe it or not. And yes, that triangle plays the very last note of the entire movement. It's yadam, clank, clank. The triangle is there. It also has no trombones, but it has trumpets, and this is the first time in Brahms that he uses 3-drum tuning, 3 timpani. In other words, most timpani parts, just so that you're interested in this, I know this fascinates you, in classical symphonies have 2 drums, and they're tuned to the tonic, which is the main key, and the dominant, which is the key a fifth above. And you can, after the Beethoven, basically, he started doing all kinds of interesting tunings. So they don't have to be those notes, but you have 2 drums. And if you want to change a note, you got to retune a drum. It was a real pain in the neck. And other composers had started using 3 timpani so that you could have more easy retuning and also more notes available for more of the actual symphony as it was playing. The first person to require 3-drum tuning, by the way, was Haydn in the Surprise Symphony. That's where we first got it. And he was very, very careful to allow time for the drummer to retune and get back to where he was going to. But Brahms uses 3 drums in the scherzo, the third movement of this symphony, which is actually not much of a scherzo. It's in very, very strict sonata form, and it's not even in triple time because the finale is in triple time. And it's a not dance-like at all. It's a sort of jolly, celebratory thing is what it is. And so all of the instruments that Brahms requires participate in that last chord. And then finally the trombones come ripping in at the beginning of the finale. And so each movement has its own selection of instruments that Brahms exploits very, very fully in each of them. It's just, he was really a master at that kind of symphonic writing. And so, again, the performances that I really enjoy understand this. They highlight, on the one hand, the differences in ensemble between each movement. It doesn't sound all like glue, like the same thing. But again, that strictness of rhythm, the consistency of energy, all of the power of the lyricism in the writing, it's all got to be there, And quite a few performances do that. I'm not saying that this is a rare quality, but some performances I think don't get it, or only get pieces of it. And one guy that always got it was James Levine, and he did it twice. He did it with the Vienna Philharmonic on Deutsche Grammophon and the Chicago Symphony on RCA, which is this one. They are both glorious, absolutely glorious. In fact, I have. Here's the Vienna Philharmonic one. I have them both. I love them both. But for my favorite, the one I would pick, frankly, most often is the earlier Chicago one, simply because that orchestra, I know I want to say the Vienna Philharmonic, oh, they're gorgeous. They are. They are magnificent. But I think this symphony needs a slightly leaner sound, a more gaunt sound, a more tensile, leonine sound. And that's what you get in this performance. It's very well recorded by RCA. The whole cycle is fabulous, by the way. It really is. I mean, both of his Brahms cycles are just amazing. I talked about them extensively in my best Brahms cycle video. So when I want to haul out the fourth and listen to it for my very own pleasure, I am more likely than not to select James Levine with the Chicago Symphony because it has enormous thrust and energy and tension, and it doesn't sound like an old man's music. There's nothing autumnal about it. It's fiery and passionate, and I love it. So that's the one for me. Keep on listening, folks. Thanks for joining. Take care.